everybody. Welcome to Frame Trap. Today, I am joined by Daniel Bloodworth.
Yo.
Bradley Ellis.
Hello.
And I will be your host, Ben Moore. It is the first Frame Trap post E3. How we all feeling? How we feeling? How do we feel like we did? What did we see? How do we feel about the show? Just general E3 sentiments.
Oh, I feel great about how we did and how we covered the show. I mean, obviously, we've taken notes for stuff to fix before next year. But, yeah, I mean, I think everything went pretty well for what we had to deal with. And, yeah.
As far as the games go, it's kind of interesting because there's not a lot that is coming at the end of this year. There's definitely some, and there are certainly things to look forward to. But, boy, spring 2020 looking real packed, I would say. Yeah.
Save your cash.
Yeah. Save it up. Brett, how are you feeling? How was E3 for you, man?
I'm feeling good. I was real tired during E3, as we all are, though. But it's worth it. Super fun. It was great.
Absolutely. It is definitely worth it. It is a huge privilege going to E3, but it is the most intense time of the year.
The most intense time.
And I had this moment where I was like, oh, man, E3 was crazy last week. And it was like, no, that was the week before.
Yeah.
And you're just still kind of feeling the effects of E3.
Especially
I know
us three.
E3 was crazy last week, too.
Yeah. Yeah. It was crazy last week, but the actual show.
Us three, we were at the finish line of E3. At the end, it was just like us three on the desk and Ian and stuff and Damiani.
Yeah.
So we were here till the end, baby.
It kind of feels like one really long day. Like it's hard to start and stop when E3 is going on. But what's crazy, and this wasn't always the case. It's really nice. I feel like before with E3, it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly when this was, but it wasn't that long ago. You would have E3 and it'd be really exciting, and then you just be kind of like patiently waiting for fall. Like there just wasn't much happening until fall. That is not the case anymore. We have a lot of games to talk about, some of which we've been anticipating for years.
Yes.
And one of those, Brad, you're in the process of reviewing it right now. It is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night.
Yeah. Igarashi's game, the spiritual successor to the Metroidvanias that we all know and loved. And I'm happy to say it does its job.
Yeah.
It's a worthy successor to Symphony of the Night. It feels good playing it.
Brad, I've been very deep into another game that we'll talk about a little later on. And I've only gotten to play a little over an hour of Bloodstained. And even in that hour, I kind of went through this arc where I was like, boy, this really is just what you would expect.
Yes. And
then that kind of turns into, but that's a really good thing.
Yes, this game is just doing what it was set out to do.
Yeah, I'm annoyed. I want to be playing more of it. Like
it's really fun.
I'm trying to sneak in some time late at night, but it's very addicting. But when we say it's like Symphony of the Night, so for maybe people who aren't familiar, what are you getting with Bloodstained? What's the appeal of Bloodstained?
So Symphony of the Night was the first Castlevania game to adopt the Metroid gameplay style of exploring environments, returning to new areas. Freeform Castlevanias were just stages pretty much before, but this time you're fully exploring the castle. Bloodstained takes that idea, kind of runs wild with it, adds a few things to separate it from Symphony of the Night. Not necessarily in the structure of you exploring this castle, but just like the tools you have throughout your adventure.
When we talk about Symphony of the Night, which is rightfully and commonly cited as one of the greatest video games of all time, and it's not just Symphony of the Night, right? There are many other Castlevania games in that style we're talking about. When we're talking about this style, it's revered for a reason, and that comes from the enemy design, the layout of the castle itself, the secrets you can find. On that level, and the nitty-gritty details, do you feel like Bloodstained is living up to that legacy?
Oh, yeah. It's got all of that.
Okay. Have there been any standout moments or interactions?
I would think what stood out to me is just how much abilities you have to mess with. So in this game, you absorb demon shards that essentially give you new abilities, which are kind of like stealing. It almost reminds me of Mega Man. You defeat an enemy and you get some of their abilities.
Yeah.
There is a staggering amount of abilities you have access to. So many tools to play with in that sense.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because it's not like it really holds that stuff back. Pretty much in the very beginning of the game, outside of the intro where it's tutorializing you, you kind of get a ton of stuff immediately. You have a ton of weapons to pick from. You have a shop. You can bring materials. You can craft things. You get a person that's giving you side quests. And enemies are giving you shards pretty consistently. So it always feels like you have new abilities to play with. And they're giant abilities where it's like, this will take all of your MP to smaller projectiles. And so
you got passive abilities, like so much stuff.
Yeah, and so I really love the freedom. It's exciting to experiment, but it's also just so nice in the beginning of a game like this, being like, I can play exactly how I want to play. Yeah. Which is really cool.
Yeah.
One of the concerns, I think, before the game was out was how it looks.
Yes.
How do you think the
final it looks version, good. I think it turned out well for what they did. I know a lot of people are upset that it wasn't like sprite-based, kind of looking more like the past Castlevania games.
Yeah.
But I think it works really well in this because it does some interesting 3D perspective stuff sometimes that you wouldn't be able to do with graphics like sprites or anything like that. Some items actually change your outfit or like what you're wearing. You could change your hair, your outfit colors, a bunch of stuff like that, which would just be harder and wouldn't be as defined if you were doing a sprite-based, I think, character design.
You mentioned that it being 3D, they're kind of taking advantage of some specific 3D things. What things in particular are you talking about?
So it's like you're running maybe and you go up a tower and it starts tilting the camera around with you and stuff like that, or you'll go in like a circle up somewhere and it rotates, stuff like that. Just kind of like little things here and there like that.
Boss fights. How are the boss fights?
Pretty good. There's a lot of bosses, which is nice. A lot of them are actually, well, I don't want to say it, but like if you've played Curse of the Moon, you'll kind of recognize some of them. You're like, oh, okay. Just little nods, but they're pretty fun. Not going to like blow you away or anything like that, but they're really solid. I don't think any boss fight was pretty disappointing or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Some were definitely more challenging than the others. The game does have a difficulty spike, I'd say, on a few of them.
I see.
That you kind of have to adjust with, but they're all pretty fun.
So when you're talking about these spikes, is it the areas that you're finding these difficult bosses in? Are those areas really tough to get through, or is it just the bosses in particular?
I mean, some areas definitely, when you're going through them, definitely ramp up, but there's a few, like one boss in particular I can think of kind of like 1/3 of the way through the game where it just kind of accelerates from what you're used to, I would say, and makes you pay attention a lot more, which is fine. Like I died on it like twice, and I was like, oh, okay, but I learned from it. Just kind of keeps you in check, I guess, and gets you ready for what's going to come in the game.
So I have to know, what is the Brad build? What shards are you rocking? What's your main weapon?
So throughout the game, I experimented a lot with stuff because I'm reviewing it too. But there was one ability I had with me pretty much the entire game, which were essentially paintings that rotate you, almost like the Bible from Symphony of the Night. I could just spam it, and it was like constant damage to enemies. So I'd get in a spot where I'd be hitting the enemy with melee attacks, but then they'd also be hitting, just maxing out that damage. Yep. That's pretty much my build, I guess. But with weapons, I kind of experiment with everything. I used greatswords a lot and whips, I would say, the most.
Yeah, I'm definitely... I feel like I always gravitate toward greatswords in games. Yeah. But the two-handed axes are also classified as greatswords. And the one that I'm using right now, I found an 8-bit coin in a little secret area, and you can trade those in for some nice weapons, and it's this giant axe, and what's great is you can be under, like an enemy will be on a platform, and the arc of it will hit them, and it has like a little flame trail.
Yeah, a lot of the weapons, especially later on, have like unique properties to them like that to make you choose one over the other. Not necessarily, you may not be always looking at the damage, I would say.
So this game is voiced. It has a storyline going on. I want to talk about the voice acting in particular. David Hayter in the game.
Just Snake, yeah.
Yeah, I love that moment where you're like, oh, what's up, Snake?
Yeah,
like, it's just so there.
Not in a bad way. I'm like,
not in a bad way
at
all.
It's good to hear you again, Snake.
Absolutely. But how has the voice acting been, the quality of it? Because I feel like you would want something that has a little bit of cheese.
Yeah. I think it's pretty good.
Not annoying.
I mean, I don't know what people are expecting from voice acting from this game, but I was never annoyed with it or anything like that. Nothing where I was just like, ugh, that's bad or anything like that. I was just like, oh, this is fine. Nothing's bugging me, really.
And the story. Yeah. Has the story been worthwhile?
I mean, to me, I don't play this game for the story, but there is a story to keep you going through it, I suppose. There's enough there to, like, little drops here and there to keep it interesting. It definitely has more story than, like, I'm always going to come back to Symphony of the Night because this is what this game is supposed to be, but It definitely has more to it than that. I would say there's cool like little notes you could read to get like context for events and stuff like that, which is nice.
Brett, do you think just this game kind of being a very prominent Kickstarter game, and then it taking a pretty reasonable amount of time to come out? Are you? You said they set out what they wanted to do. Do you personally feel like it was worth it? Would you want a Bloodstained 2? Are you in for DLC that they released down the line?
Yeah, I was very pleased with how it turned out.
Well, fantastic.
Because I always just think of Mighty Number 9 every time. And I'm just like, man, people hated that game. Like, what a disappointment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because you look at Bloodstained, and at least so far, it's been... Oh man, like this is filling that hole in a way that it wasn't being filled. Like it's funny because there have been a bunch of other
Metroidvania games.
Right, there have been a bunch of other Metroidvania games, but just all of the elements, the music, the way that it looks, the specific style, how the mechanics blend together. It's like okay, like this is clearly being worked on by that Castlevania lineage, and you can tell. And so it satisfies you in the right way. And even though there have been a bunch of other comparable games, like this hits the spot because it's coming from the source.
Exactly.
And so that's really, really nice.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of nods to like past games too that you've played the other games. You'll definitely pick up on.
Yeah. I want to play more
It's
of it.
Great. Check it out.
Check it out.
My only complaint so far is there's some performance issues I've run into. Like the game will kind of just stop for a second when I load through zones and maybe I hit a guy too fast, it might freeze for a quick second.
Interesting.
One of the boss fights just kind of glitched out on me, and he just was like stuck in an area he's not supposed to be. I was still able to finish it, but it was just goofy.
Yeah.
But just like few technical hiccups here and there.
And you're on PS4, right?
Correct.
Okay. I'm on Xbox, and I haven't noticed anything yet, but I'll keep an eye out. Another game that came out around the madness of E3, and I didn't finish it entirely in one setting, but it was mostly in one setting, and that kind of speaks to how much fun I was having, is Cadence of Hyrule. Which I am pretty excited to talk about. And what's nice is we all have some experience with Cadence of Hyrule. And so I've finished it. Brad, you're about halfway through it with 2 dungeons down. And then Blood, you've just kind of messed around in the beginning, right?
Yeah, I've beaten one boss. I've gotten the maracas. But yeah, still working my way through a little bit.
The musical puns that they do with the classic Zelda bosses. Pretty great. And there's a lot in this game that is pretty great. So if you're not familiar with what it is, and I think a lot of people are, is it's Crypt of the Necrodancer, but set in Hyrule with a Legend of Zelda skin, and that ends up mattering in a lot of cool ways. It really feels like a Zelda game.
Yeah, I was surprised.
Which is great. So you'll be going through and you'll be fighting classic Zelda enemies, and you'll get done with an area and you'll look on your map and you're like, wait, there's something still here, and you'll have a wall to bomb, and you'll go in there and there'll be more enemies to fight. And pretty early on, you can pick between either Link or Zelda. So you start a tutorial as Cadence from Crypt of the Necrodancer, and then you can pick either Link or Zelda. And I actually had a really interesting experience. And like the flow of this game was so weird to me because I started it and I just was not, it just wasn't quite clicking yet, and I was having a hard time. And I started as Zelda, and I was not getting very far. It felt like I just wasn't in step with what the game wanted to be. And so I started a brand new game, and this time I chose Link. And there was definitely a little bit of a hurdle, but then I reached this point, and it kind of happens like after you get enough hearts to kind of tank everything, but also once you just understand all the enemies. Yeah, once you understand the systems, once you get the right weapon, that helps a lot. So once I got a spear,
I was gonna say spear helps.
The spear is amazing. And once I got a few hearts, like then it just like steamed rolled the rest of the game. Yeah. Like it just wasn't an issue anymore.
There's like 25 minutes of just kind of learning the game and understanding it, getting the flow. But once you do, then you're like, oh, okay, full steam ahead.
Right. And when I saw the credits for it, I was like, I actually wished I had more moments of struggle. Because once I kind of got in tune with it, it just was not a big deal at all. But even in spite of that, I think there's enough going on in this game that I really encourage people to check it out. Like I couldn't stop playing it. That's how much fun I was having. And The combat is really satisfying, but the combat is really satisfying because it's you have those moments where it can feel really frenetic. Like you'll be in a dungeon. Like dungeons are good examples. Dungeons are very combat focused. There's not a lot of puzzles solving going on in dungeons, but you'll be in these very tiny rooms and you'll have a bunch of enemies surrounding you, and you kind of just have to dismantle it like a puzzle where it's like, okay, I know this guy's going to move diagonal, so I'm going to move down here, and then these other guys are going to swarm me, and then I'm going to do a bop, bop, hit both of them, and just doing it to the beat of this music, it feels so good and so satisfying. And there's, outside of Crypt of the Necrodancer, you're not going to get an action RPG that is like this.
Right.
That feels so, so, so good. And the music just deserves all the praise in the world. So they're taking the classic Zelda music and mashing it together and making it sound very familiar but different at the same time. And if you enjoy Zelda, the music is just, it's worth it for the music alone. Mm-hmm. But there's also this fantastic game.
Like just the, you're talking about mashing it together. Just when on the beach and like realizing that like, one moment I'm hearing something from Link's Awakening, and then like a second later I'm hearing something in Wind Waker, and it's like it all makes sense. It's all thematically similar, but it just weaves it together just effortlessly, and like I don't know where the break is necessarily between them.
Right, and there's so much love and care that went into this, where you just feel rewarded as a fan of the series. And it's very minor things, but you'll hear this glorious music and then you'll like pause to bring up your map, and then it will immediately seamlessly transition into like an 8-bit rendition or a 16-bit rendition of that song, and then you'll go out of the map. And it'll seamlessly transition.
Yeah, just like a lot of iconic areas from Zelda games too that you'll appreciate, like Kakariko Village, Zora stuff, Gerudo stuff.
Right. And it is not a long game. I probably finished it in 5 or 6 hours, and so you're talking about these classic areas.
It's so funny because I probably played it 5 or 6 hours, and I'm nowhere near that close. I'm struggling more than you guys.
But yeah, you have like Kakariko Village, or you run into a lot of like Zelda tribes that you would expect, but no area drags on too long. I mean, you can go through a dungeon in 15, 20 minutes maybe, and that I think that's what makes it so addicting is there's always this incredible sense of progression, and you'll go through and you'll beat the dungeon, and you'll get your heart container, and you'll get one of the instruments that you'll need to open up Hyrule Castle, but you maybe find a cave that you just bombed open or revealed with your sword or something, like cut down a bush, and you'll find a pretty substantial item that you'll need to progress. And so you're always finding something, whether it's a new weapon or a temporary power-up or whatever. And I think the durability system works really well with the game. And so you have items like your rings and your boots where they'll provide you a benefit, and your torch is another good example. So like you may get boots that it's like, okay, this will increase your defense, or this ring will heal you when you attack enemies, something like that. But they never last that long. And so you're always kind of on the hunt for new items because you're constantly replacing them. And then you'll run into situations where it's like, I really like this ring, but it's at half durability. So do I want to switch it to this other ring that isn't quite as good, or I don't like it as much, but it has full durability? And so just throughout the entire game, you're constantly making decisions like that. And they just did a really good job of including classic Zelda things. So you'll go into different towns, and one of them will have an archery contest that you can do, and there'll be multiple rewards that you can get from that.
There's bomb shoe bowling.
There's a bomb shoe bowling.
Which is great.
And that's really fun. And the way that they include enemies from the original Crypt of the Necrodancer, just as small nods, is really, really good. But it's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's
a really
fantastic game. The only thing is I wish, like I said, once it clicked, there was a little bit more challenge, but there's a challenge mode where I believe it is you just get one life. So when you die, that's it.
Cool.
Which is cool.
There you go.
But
2 playable characters.
And then there's like a double beat or something like that after you beat it.
A double beat? I'm not sure.
Oh, or it's just faster?
Yeah, I think there's something like that. But I'm not sure. I just kind of overheard that somewhere.
Yeah, I know. There's a way, so in the options, you can actually turn off the need to step in time with the beat. Because what happens is if you actually miss a beat, whatever action you're trying to do on the beat and you miss it, like that won't come out. So if you try to attack off beat, that attack won't come out and you'll leave yourself vulnerable.
Right.
And so
but you can stay in position and wait for enemies.
Yes. You can. Yeah. Yes.
Which
and you can even bounce against walls into the beat and wait for them to come. Sorry.
Yeah, but that's something that like I've kind of used in my favor. Is like, all right, let this guy come to me, and then just kind of like lead him on a little chase of like, all right, I'm going to move forward and then hit you, and then move forward and then hit you, and then move forward and then hit you.
Yeah. I know you can turn off that requirement. I did not do that, and I know a lot of people have done that just to get used to the game or to get used to enemy behaviors, and I think that is totally fine. Sure. I'm also kind of happy that I didn't do that because I feel like if I spent a lot of time with it off,
to me that's what makes this game really unique too.
Right,
is that it's all built around this mechanic.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think my kind of bigger struggle is just kind of, and maybe this just goes for games in general, is just trying to learn to read what everything is doing. And I might be focused on one enemy and then not seeing what the other enemies are about to crowd around me and that kind of thing.
Another thing I guess that is worth mentioning is how useful the items can be, particularly bombs.
Yeah.
Just because they do so much damage and can hit so many enemies at once. And so, yeah, you'll definitely have moments where you'll run into some big dudes and you're like, okay, I don't know exactly what these guys are going to do, but I'm going to drop a couple of bombs and we'll just take care of the situation. And so that's
nice. You can use the grappling hook to like get rid of their shields and stuff too, which is cool.
Yeah, I didn't get the grappling hook. And so the world map is randomized when you play it. It's not going to be the same for everybody. And the order in which you get items is different as well. And so I didn't get the grappling hook to like the very end.
Oh, okay.
And I did not.
Did you do the Zora dungeon last?
No, I did the
I guess it's
Gerudo
just purely random then what you get. Okay.
dungeon.
Cool. Yeah, I noticed that when I was watching Damiani play on stream. It's like, oh, your lost woods are over there. Okay.
Right. I guess the last thing I want to say that isn't specific to Cadence of Hyrule, but this collaboration between Zelda and Crypt of the Necrodancer worked out so phenomenally well. Like, this was such a treat to play through that now I'm just hungry for more of it. I want to see more prominent or just really talented indie developers
take it on Nintendo,
get these licenses and see what they can do with them.
Sure, yeah.
Obviously, I think you need to take a lot of care with what goes where.
Yes.
But I think this sort of idea, this sort of mentality could really bear wonderful fruit, and I just want to see a lot more of it.
I want to see Nintendo give Donkey Kong to Platinum Games. Let them go crazy. Can you imagine a Donkey Kong action game? It would be so funny.
But I'm thinking...
Think of the Donkey Kong combos.
I'm thinking like in the style of Mad World, so it's black and white, and Donkey Kong is just like violently ripping people apart. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of like air juggles with Donkey Kong.
Sure.
Shooting bananas, dude.
Donkey Kong on a motorcycle?
Hell yeah.
There we go.
That's what I'm talking about.
Blood, another game that has been getting a lot of hype, and I've played some of it, and you've played more of it, is Crash Team Racing.
Woo. Yeah, man. Super excited and super impressed with this. We've talked about it on other shows and stuff, but I missed it the first time around. I didn't have a PlayStation back then, and I didn't, even really hear about it until years later. But playing this remake, super fun. I'm very impressed. I think one of the terms you'll hear go around a lot is skill based.
Yeah.
And I think it's very, very true.
It is so accurate.
Yeah, nice. Because number one, it's one of those games, which it can be a pet peeve of mine sometimes. It's one of those games that really pushes you to no, you got to get first. Like if you want to beat this track, you got to get first, or you just do it again.
It was the very first adventure mode race in the game, and I haven't played Crash Team Racing since the PS1 days, and so my memory, a lot of my memory for it had pretty much completely evaporated, and it was intense all the way until the end, and just you win by fractions of a second.
Yeah.
And how, you're right, skill-based, where it's you not hitting those drifts or those jumps in a good way will really cost you. This is an intense game in a great kind of exciting way.
Cool.
It was refreshing.
It does really feel like you're fighting for position. And one of the things I've noticed too is that like a lot, like you know how like Mario Kart, you can kind of expect the field to be sort of spread out. So that like, okay, you know, these guys are over here. Maybe there'll be like 2 guys battling it out or whatever. But Crash Team Racing, a lot of the tracks I've noticed that guys are really like, there's just a group of AI drivers just like all bunched up together. So if you get hit, then you get passed up by 4 or 5 guys. But similarly, if you can break ahead, if you can chain your boosts together, then you can pass them all in the right turn and then just try to keep ahead of them.
Maybe this wasn't the case for you, but it was definitely the case for me, just having Mario Kart so ingrained in my brain and that boosting system. Here, doing the boost where you really have to pay attention, like you have to hit another button, you have to jump and then hit the opposite button to do the boost.
Also, the angle of how you go into a drift is very different, so it takes a little bit of adjustment to like, okay, if I push the stick too soon, I'm going to end up drifting the wrong way.
Right, but then you have to wait, so like when you're drifting, a meter is filling up and it goes up fast, but you have to hit it at the right time.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot to pay attention to. Something that I don't know what your method is, but when I'm trying to do the boost, there's a meter in the bottom right. I actually find that like it takes my eyes too far away from the track, and so I actually just pay attention to when it goes. The black smoke appears.
Yeah, so you got the black smoke, and then also the tires will turn red.
Okay.
So you can watch for those visual cues on the driver itself. And the track layouts are like really good. There's one that I did kind of recently where like you're going through these sewers and stuff, and there's a lot of like there's these high banks, so you can get up on top of those, but you can also like really drift through the center, like through the water. And then the other thing is with the adventure mode, you can go back to courses after you've beaten them the first time, and they've got these CTR challenges, and so basically it's kind of like Donkey Kong Country. So you'll have the letters out there, so there'll be a C, a T, and an R that you have to collect and win the race. And the locations of some of them like really make you start scratching your head, because just going back to the first course, there's this dock that you go under, and there was a T up on top of that dock, and I'm like, what the crap? Like, how you're supposed to get up there? How do I get up there? And so I'm like searching around the whole course, looking for some hole, some tunnel. There's nothing, absolutely nothing. And then what it ends up being is there's this shortcut I had no idea existed, to where essentially there's this inlet, this like water, this like little puddle or pond or whatever, and if you go through that, there's essentially like a ramp. So if you ramp off the edge of that pond, then you can jump onto this cliff on the other side, and then you can go around to that T. And getting around to that T is kind of crappy. It hurts your time. But then now you know about this shortcut, you can just bypass this whole thing where you're going straight across rather than around this cliff. And so it's a really cool way of like teaching you that these shortcuts even exist that otherwise you wouldn't have any clue.
Damn.
And I think that's another thing that I don't feel like was in Mario Kart until much later, is just that whole idea of like getting the height and getting the boost off of jumps like that. So it's like I'm going to jump off of a jump and then get a speed boost, and that feels really good. I think that everything like looks really good. There's a whole lot of like characters unlock and progression that like I haven't even gotten to yet.
Yeah, you're getting coins which you can spend on like customization stuff.
Cool. Yeah, there's a lot of kart customization, and I am playing the classic mode right now. So basically, once you start, it's like it's the way the original game was made. So like when you start with a character, you're pretty much stuck with them through the whole adventure. But there are a lot of other characters and stuff for playing the other modes, and
so you haven't gotten probably to mess around with too many other characters and how they race. Okay, so which character did you pick?
I just went with Crash.
Okay. That's who I've played so far as well.
I put up a little video on Twitter too, because the facial animations were so funny to me. Because I like turned the cart around and I started like pushing the gas, and like just saw like every time I'd push the gas, he'd stick his tongue out like
That's pretty good.
And then if you hold it down, then like it gets out further and then like moves from side to side and starts flapping. Like there's just a lot of great animation there for something that
you don't even
not even really going to see, like unless you're in like a replay or something.
But this is not relevant to Crash Team Racing, but I just got to say, that Splatoon shirt is dope.
Yeah,
it's just really good.
Yeah,
it's a really
that's
good
from
shirt.
the Uniqlo sponsorship.
Yeah, which sounded like I was just trying to plug our sponsor, but I just really like I just really like the shirt.
What's cool though is the guy that set up the sponsorship. He's been a viewer and a patron for a while, and so when he set it up, he was like, everyone like go through the collection and like find something that you like, and so saw the Splatoon shirts coming up and just like really like had to get picky, like which one?
Yeah.
Have you done any online at all with CTR yet?
I haven't yet. Okay. No, I've just really been doing adventure mode. I've gotten past like the first boss. Have you done the boss battle?
I have not done the boss battles.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So there is this one of your weapons is these TNT box, and so essentially what happens is if you hit the TNT box and it gets stuck on your head and a timer goes off until it explodes. If you jump a lot, you can like knock it off.
I really love that mechanic. Like the panic that it induces when you get one of those TNT boxes on you is pretty great. Yeah.
But the first boss fight, this guy named Leroux, he just starts dropping them like crazy, and so there's a lot of work that you have to do to avoid like running into those boxes constantly.
Just giving it a spin, there was definitely this pretty substantial learning curve with me in CTR, and so I guess did you go through that process as well? Did you have to repeat a lot of races? Like how long did it take you until you got comfortable? Are you comfortable now?
I mean, I think I'm getting more comfortable with it. I like I said, I think the biggest trick really is learning to work with that actual angle of the slide and working that into how you get around curves in those tracks.
Yeah.
And I think once you get that timing down and that angle down, the hitting the boosts off isn't as hard. It's just really like, just getting that initial mechanic of, okay, I'm going to jump and then I'm going to land and then I'm going to slide into it.
When I think about Mario Kart, whenever there's a new Mario Kart out, I feel like I just kind of slide into it so easily. Like it's like, yep, I'm not struggling with this at all. Like whatever new things you introduce just feels so natural, for better or for worse. Like you just kind of have that riding a bike sensation with Mario Kart, whereas Crash Team Racing is definitely going for a very different, more skill-based thing. Do you have a preference between the two? Is there some things you would like to take from one, bring them over to the other, and vice versa?
I mean, in terms of single player, I think Crash Team Racing is definitely more fun to play, just because you have to master all these mechanics and constantly, there's another track that's kind of, in a way, almost like a motocross kind of thing. It's like really muddy and stormy, and there's a lot of these like dirt hills and stuff to jump off of, and you really have to time when you're going to hit your jumps to like get the maximum amount of boost out of it, and that's great. There's a lot of skill-based stuff there on single player. What I think probably is going to end up being the case in multiplayer is it makes it a lot less accessible for people to just jump in and compete with friends and family who haven't been playing. And so then you just, if you've been playing it a lot, you're just kind of smoking everyone and then you feel bad, Whereas Mario Kart, the mechanics are simple enough that, even if people aren't making the most of it, they can still compete. The items make it really easy for you to catch up. And so that's probably where some of that trade-off comes from.
Crash has just had this incredible resurgence between the Insane Trilogy and now Crash Team Racing. Do you hope for or expect, what's the next step for Crash in your mind?
I hope now that they've done all this, that it can lead to, having the goodwill, because Crash, there were a lot of other Crash sequels that people essentially didn't care about. it didn't even feel like the publisher cared that much about them. They just like, okay, this is a franchise that sells to kids and families, and so let's put it out there and just get that audience. But I think now, with them bringing back the trilogy and them doing such a good job on that and with CTR, I'm hoping that gives them the freedom to make something new,
right?
And be just as good and tightly controlled, and then to like also introduce some good new ideas.
Something that I want to bring up just because it's funny is when you boot up Crash Team Racing for the first time, you have to scroll through like pages upon pages of this.
It's 42 pages for the license agreement, and then 28 pages for something else afterwards.
What is going on? Yeah, and you're just sitting there like holding.
You have to hit the shoulder button.
Yeah.
Why?
Through every page.
Why?
Because Activision, I don't know.
And it's just especially funny for like this goofy, colorful game. You're sitting there just scrolling
like
through this user
strictest, agreement you ever have to make in any video game.
Oh, Activision.
and it's silly because it's kind of like age gates, right? It's like, who actually believes that people are really like reading this stuff?
Can you imagine just buying this for your kid and they're like 8 and they just boot up the game and there's like 60 pages of just pages they gotta go through? Yep. It's like, what is this?
Yeah, and they have some interesting things coming up too with there's like a Grand Prix or something in a couple of weeks. Some
cool
additional content, and I think like if you get through it, like you unlock an extra course.
Crash is a service.
Yeah.
Crash as a service. That's right, baby.
Well, let's keep the train rolling. A game that I am really excited to talk about that's finally upon us.
It's here
in North America is Judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is from the Yakuza people, for those of you who don't know, and in a lot of ways is very much a Yakuza game. So you're set in Kamurocho, so you're set in the same place. And so the layout is very familiar. Things are where you expect them to be, by and large. Don Quixote is where Don Quixote is. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it is falling into place. And the combat system is very similar in a lot of ways.
Heat actions?
They're not called heat actions. They're called the EX actions.
They're heat actions.
But yes, I mean, if you just called them heat actions, like there would be no point in correcting you because they serve the same purpose. And like some of them are like just the same. Like you just kick the guy in the face.
That's funny.
When he's on the ground. You like jump on him with the bike. It's a Yakuza game. And
are there any lawyer-specific heat actions? Do you get like a judge's gavel or anything?
Briefcase.
No, it's funny because the guy that you're playing as, the main character, Yagami, he definitely has those moments where you'll be having conversations with people, and it's like, okay, I need to ask the right question so they'll give me the right information. And so you'll have dialogue options pop up, and it's like, okay, what sequence of questions should I ask to get to where I want to be? And if you actually do that correctly, you'll get bonus SP.
Oh, okay.
And SP, the way that it works is you build that up, and then you can acquire new skills and things like that. And so there are plenty of moments where you feel like an investigator, but when you're in combat, that's kind of out the window, where it's like I'm jumping off walls and doing attacks and like grabbing traffic cones and beating them in the face. Like you're not very lawyery, I suppose, in combat, but that's okay. Is well presented. So I think that's the way I want to frame this discussion with Judgment is, yes, it is very, very familiar, but I think it really makes a case for itself. It doesn't just feel like Yakuza with a new skin, and I think both mechanically it does enough to separate itself, and narratively I think it does enough to separate itself. I think the danger that you run into when you tell a story as long as Judgment is, I'm about at the end of the game, and you could probably you could spend a lot longer than this, but you can probably see the main story through in like 25 hours, maybe 30, somewhere around there, is a rough estimate. And so it's telling a fairly lengthy story, comparable to many other Yakuza games. And when you do that, it's like, okay, Yakuza has really like refined itself and really created these characters that are iconic. And so you're going against something that people already love and are well established if you're familiar with these types of games, which I am. And I think I can happily say that like the cast of characters here compare favorably to your Kiryus, to your Majimas. Maybe not like quite as good, but the relationships that they're selling are really wonderful. And Yagami himself, he's great because he's somebody that's kind of haunted by this mistake from the past. And the way that they write him is he's somebody who is haunted by the past, but he's not one of those characters that like moans about it all the time.
Yeah.
Like he's not sitting in his apartment and is like, oh man, I'm such a failure. Like he's a man of purpose. He's a man of action. Like there are things that make him uncomfortable. I think there are things that are hard for him to face, but he's always out there doing stuff. He's a very active character. He's a man of action. So I think that makes him fun to be around.
Yeah.
And he has this kind of buddy cop vibe with this guy named Kaito. And you just can't help but think of Michael Huber, like just this very big guy that is like, he's just, if Yagami is all about action, Kaito is all about like, I'm going to go in and just beat the crap out of everybody.
Yeah, Michael Huber.
Yeah. Huber doesn't beat the crap out of everybody, but
he just loves characters like that.
Right. Just that kind of like, hell yeah, let's do this.
Hell, big boy
sort of vibe. And their interactions are really great, but despite Kaito kind of falling into that archetype, there's a lot of history and depth there with him as well that's really fun to uncover. And you're trying to uncover this mystery, and what's great about it is it presents these as cases, right? And you think the scope of the case is going to be like this, where it's like, okay, there are all these people that are getting murdered and their eyes are getting gouged out.
Oh,
why is this happening? Yeah. So there are these Yakuza members who are getting their eyes gouged out. They're being dumped in alleyways.
Targeted, yeah.
And you're like, why is this happening? Where the case goes from there is it's not just about that. That is one piece of a bigger whole, and then that whole is part of an even bigger whole. And it's pretty methodical and in a nice slow burn where as you're uncovering those secrets, it's really fun figuring that stuff out and seeing what the twists are going to be and how everything is connected and finding out that characters are maybe more tied into things than you initially expected, which is really great.
Does it have the eating mechanics?
It does. Yeah, and so that's something that I think other Yakuza games have done well, but it's a thing that you want to be done well in this type of game, and Judgment really nails, where in an open world game, it's nice when it feels like everything flows into everything else. And so if you go to a restaurant and you eat because you just want to recover your health, maybe you just got in a fight and somebody took off like 25% of your health, and you're like, I'm going to go grab some sushi. Mm-hmm. Well, if you try new sushi, you'll get skill points. It's like, hey, you tried this thing. On your way to go get sushi, you might run into a friend event. Like this guy will have this little smiley face above him, and he'll have a relationship that you can build up. And then that'll increase your city reputation. And then when that city reputation goes up, you get access to more things. You'll get access to more side quests.
City rep.
Right. And so it's like you kind of have this chain of events where it's like, I go to this place to recover my health. That gets me more skill points. I increase my reputation. I can do more side quests. And so that, like, you end up just doing everything because everything has value. You go to the batting cages, you'll get some skill points for doing that if you just want to have fun. Or, like, that might be something that you do with a date that you have. And she's like, hey, we went to the arcade last time. Or you might say you'll have, like, the options of going to the arcade and doing the claw machine or going to the batting cages or doing darts. And you go and you do those things, and it's like not only are you doing this awesome mini game, but you're increasing the relationship with her and getting skill points all the while. And this is something that you can say about other Yakuza games, but just the sense, like covering these games for a really long time, and a strong sense that I'm getting from Judgment is they just keep getting better at it. They just keep getting better at weaving all of these different components that they have together into a package that, like, you're kind of having fun no matter which way you're going about it. And so, like, even if you're just going through the main story, like, you're bound to run into a bunch of things along the way. Like, another mechanic is you'll get a text message from this poor guy, and he's like, oh, man, there are these, like, really nasty gang members that are beating up me and my friends. And you'll see on the map these purple dots of these bigger, tougher enemies that you can go take out. And then if you go and you do that, and this happens pretty regularly throughout the game, that guy will be like, hey, thanks for saving us, man. And he'll drop off stuff.
Cool.
At your apartment.
Does it still have like that Yakuza tone of like serious moments, but also really goofy moments that
Absolutely.
work well?
Yes.
Like dancing baby man and stuff like that?
Yes. So I would say the main story is very, very serious, right? Haunted by the past.
Yeah.
Like, essentially the narrative is like, oh man, like I believed that I was doing the right thing and that had terrible consequences. So pretty heavy stuff. But then, Brad, there's a series of side quests. It's like, I think it's like the Perverted Trio or something like that. Terrible Trio. And it's like these perverts who are like running around the city doing perverted things. And so one of them is like stealing panties from around the city. And then another one is like grabbing butts around the city.
Oh my goodness.
And his name is Ass Ketchum.
Ass Ketchum, that's right. Great translation.
Wow.
I love it.
Yeah. Obviously paying like a joke on Ash Ketchum, the Pokemon character, but just like, and it's really funny. And you'll have tons of moments like that. I would say my biggest criticism of the game and the part where I'm not disappointed, but it's a problem that I've run into with other Yakuza games, and I feel like the storytelling could be benefited here, is when you do make that choice where you're like, I want to go do the main story, it feels like it has moments where it's definitely spinning its wheels.
Yes.
And so you'll be like, okay, I'm going to go do this thing, and then it will like force you into a side quest. And it's not that the side quest that you're doing is bad. In fact, it's hilarious. One of them is like you go into the office, like somebody calls you and they're like, you need to come to the office really quickly. Something terrible has happened. And it's just you trying to figure out like who ate somebody's dessert. And so you have to like go around the office and like zoom in on things and ask people questions. And it's really funny and charming, but there are just definitely moments where you're like, I'm ready to move on, and the game is not letting that happen. And sometimes that happens in the form of side quests, which is okay. But then there'll be other times where it's like, I just need to wait for this person to call me. And so you're just kind of running around waiting to get that call. And it doesn't take too long. It's not that bad.
Right.
Or there'll be moments where it's like, hey, go to this point. And you go to this point and the interaction is just very, very brief. And now it's like, okay, now run to the other side of the city. And so I think it could be a tighter story. And I think they could maybe eliminate some of these roadblocks that they're throwing in your way. And it happens, it's not like, oh, it was just one bad chapter. Like, this happens pretty regularly throughout the game. But I think it's cushioned by the fact that there is so much to do in the world, and that so much of it is really, really fun. You have this drone that you use in your investigations throughout the storyline. You can do drone races, and you can like upgrade the drone and give it different parts. There's this pretty fun kind of Mario Party-esque, except you're just playing by yourself in the courses that I've done. It's this VR thing, and so you like put on these VR goggles and you try to go across this game board, and different spaces trigger different events. That's neat.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Is there the car racing? The little mini cars?
Not that. No.
Damn.
But you do get the drone racing, which kind of fills in for that.
Okay. That was like my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, so you have a replacement, basically. You have the arcade. You have a lot of stuff that you would expect. And you being a detective, I think, also adds some variety that you don't get in the main storyline of Yakuza games in the same way. Whereas, like, you're not just talking and punching. There's a lot of that. But it's like, oh, okay, I need to pick this lock, and there's different ways you can pick locks. Like I said, you're having dialogue options throughout the story that I think keep you just a little bit more invested in the conversation. You're like, I need to pay attention so I can pick the right things. There'll be times where you'll need to don a disguise. There'll be times where you need to investigate, where it's like, okay, I'm looking for this thing in this room, and so you'll go into first-person mode and pick different things. And so there's a lot going on.
Sweet.
I think the new setting, or not the new setting, the new profession, you being a detective, not the new setting.
I was like, new setting, excuse me?
Yeah, you being a detective, the new characters, really does liven it up in a pretty good way.
Nice.
It's definitely cut from that cloth. There's a lot more similar than not, but I think the new things are definitely cool. There was one more thing that I wanted to say. Yeah, there's some fun. It's very light, but there's some customization stuff. So you can get like records, like from doing different things, and you can play that in your apartment. You get a pinball machine in your apartment, which is pretty cool. You can place like little items on top of like your closet.
Can you change your outfits and stuff?
So there are disguises that you can wear.
Cool.
Yeah, and those there's some good ones. There's some good ones. And so there'll be times where you need to sneak into an area.
I haven't played it. Prediction, there'll be a little Majima one or a Kazuma one. That's my prediction.
Have not seen that yet.
Damn.
So
that's endgame. That is
maybe that's like
100%.
Yeah,
achievement.
That's 100%.
Do the costumes feel like you're wearing a costume, or do they feel like you just changed your character model?
They feel like you're wearing a costume, but like some of them. Okay, there's one where you just put on a beanie and sunglasses, like you have the same jeans and shoes and everything, and you look almost identical. And some of the tone it takes with that is like, oh man, they're never gonna notice me.
That's funny.
The new mechanics do go a long way. I do think there are times where they kind of overdo it a little bit, and one that I think is overused and not that fun to begin with is you're tailing people a lot.
Oh, okay.
And the way that works is
usually not that fun in games.
No, and it's fine here at first, but then like some of the tailing things get like they're too long or they have too many of them too close together. And you'll be following somebody, and there's this meter up above, and they'll like be walking down the street, and they'll constantly turn around and look behind them. And sometimes you don't know what you can hide behind until you get kind of close to it. And so it's like, okay, well, where do I hide? I hide. Okay, they're looking around, they're doing the thing, and they're turning about around. And it just pretty much plays the same way all the time. And so it's okay, but it's a mechanic that I think is maybe just slightly overused.
Yes.
In judgment.
Cool.
But yeah, I recommend it.
Sounds fun, man.
It is very fun. Despite, like, maybe the storytelling could stand to be a little bit tighter, but I do think when it does go in on the story, it's been really engaging.
Sweet.
That's
good.
Like, if you come into these things for the story, I don't think you'll be too disappointed here. But yeah, kind of on the opposite end of that, Daniel Bloodworth, you're not beating up dudes. Oh, before we move on, I should talk a little bit about the combat.
Yeah.
So there are styles, but unlike Yakuza 0, where you can switch between 4 different ones, there are 2 here. There's Tiger, where it's focused on like one-on-one. And honestly, the one that you'll probably end up using the most just because it's very powerful. Then you also have Crane, which is better at dealing with multiple enemies, so you'll get these like really wide kicks. But the animations are great.
Nice.
There's a nice weight to the combat. It feels good. And they have this new mechanic called Mortal Wound, which I actually really like. And it's annoying when it doesn't go in your favor, but enemies will kind of charge up with energy, and they'll do these attacks where they'll kind of glow for a second. And if you get hit by those attacks specifically, it'll actually just cleave off like a section of maximum health. So even if you heal, you won't be able to get that health back. And so it's punishing you for not using the right defense. And this is really cool for a couple of different reasons. The first is that, like, once you get comfortable with Yakuza combat, you can kind of feel like every fight is the same, or you're just sort of mashing your way through it.
Square, triangle.
Right. It doesn't feel very tactical. This adds a nice little tactical layer for... So you can either just avoid getting hit by these like mortal wound attacks, or what you can do is you can kind of go into this burst mode where it's burning your EX gauge or heat action gauge. And then if you get hit while in that mode, you won't take mortal wounds.
Got it.
But that's burning all your meter, so you're not going to be able to do high damaging EX attacks. And so it's a nice trade-off and something that you have to think about, like, how do I want to tackle this situation? If you do get hit by a mortal wound, the other nice thing about it is it's really expensive to treat. So it's like 20,000 yen just to heal it one time. And if you want to buy the items that you can use when you're in battle, these medical kits, those are really expensive too. So it's like 40,000 for a small one, 80,000 for a medium one, something like that. And so it's also making money more valuable. And so anything to kind of make you think a bit more strategically to make money more valuable, good, in my opinion. And so I think it's a nice addition.
I love Yakuza games, but my least favorite part is usually the boss fights. Mm-hmm. I think they're kind of boring a lot of times.
Yeah.
How do they stack up this time?
Very similar in a lot of ways, but I would say that Mortal Wound mechanic
just adds an extra layer.
Yeah, just adds an extra layer. So I feel like you're forced to play it a bit more cautiously than you would in the past. They also really heavily limit recovery items, so you can only carry a small handful at first, and you actually have to spend skill points to increase that. And so
that's cool.
You can't. You eventually can once you kind of spec things out, but it's I feel like they're just nudging you a little bit to. It's not that it was mindless before, but now there's just more strategy.
Yeah, are they like as long as previous ones too?
None of the boss fights have been like egregiously long.
Okay.
Anyways, I still have to do the final boss fight, but
cool.
Yeah, it hasn't been too bad.
Cool. Sounds hype.
Yeah, look forward to that. Blood, what I was saying before, you've been playing some Forza Lego expansion, which was definitely an E3 moment, but how has the actual game been?
Yeah, because I think that's the thing when you see it at E3, or even if you play the demo, it's just like that introductory race, and it's like, okay, there's one race, and like you get kind of a quick tour of the map, but that's it, you know. But this is like, no, this is a full, huge map, and it's really cool just to look at the map itself and just see all the stuff. So they've got like a great big speedway at the top. They've got this huge desert with like dinosaur bones on one side and like this crashed spaceship on the other.
Nice.
There's like this beach full of pirate ships.
That's cool.
There's like this huge town that you can drive around and just like smash through trees and things. And there's these fields of the plastic flowers. There's even like there's one of the challenges. You do a lot of different challenges. And one of the challenges is to like smash through like a couple hundred flowers or something like that with a certain amount of time.
How's the brick breaking sound when you're crashing into these Legos?
That's one of the best things.
Okay.
It's one of those things where like, oh, I kind of took this turn wrong, but I kind of want to stay here for a second because I'm just like mowing down these trees or whatever and like hearing the Lego sound. And after you've done a few things, I think it's after you get your first upgrade. So kind of the way that they've structured progression on top of the regular Forza progression is you do these challenges, you do races and stuff, and you get bricks. You get a certain amount of bricks from each of these things, and so they've got a space for your house, which is a big thing in Forza Horizon 4 is earning houses. Mm-hmm. But in the Lego expansion, there's not a house there. It's just this empty lot. And so you get enough bricks, and then you can build a house. And then the next thing, you get enough bricks to build the Ferrari, and then you get enough bricks to build a garage. And then I'm not sure what comes after that. The Ferrari is like the last thing I got last night.
So when you're building these houses and these garages, because it's Lego, like, are you just building like this recipe thing where it's like it's going to be the same every time?
You're not really building it.
Okay.
It's just like you've done enough challenges for the helicopter to just like drop the thing onto the pad.
Okay. So you're not seeing it get assembled brick by brick either.
No,
it just kind of comes down as one thing. All right.
But it is cool to like drive around it and take a close look and see like all the little details and stuff they have in there. Like even though it's Lego, like they've managed to somehow like create this mailbox where you've got like 2 letters shoved into it that are sticking out of the mailbox. So there's just a lot of great detail throughout. Same thing with like car damage. You wouldn't necessarily expect car damage in Lego, but your bumper can pop off and you know.
So if that happens in a race, like somebody pops off your Lego bumper, is that bumper like still hanging out on the track when you come back around, or does it disappear?
Might be.
Okay.
Like a lot of the Lego stuff, when you smash it to a certain distance, like it'll still be there. You can get far enough away to where you come back and things respawn, of course, but it doesn't. It's not like the Warner Brothers Telltale games. Where like things just kind of instantly vanish as soon as you bust them. They seem to stick around for quite a bit, and you can shove them and push them around for a while.
Are you still a normal human in a Lego car, or are you a Lego avatar?
When you're in the Lego car, you have a Lego avatar.
Nice.
The funny thing is in cockpit view, because their arms are so far apart, they don't really grab the steering wheel, so you can't even see the arms. You just see the steering wheel moving left and right. But it's funny that there's like, they put all the same views, the same cockpit views that you would get in a normal car. And you can also drive the normal cars in the Lego expansion if you want. There's not like a restriction to being in a Lego car. And I don't think there's a lot of them to earn. I think that it's probably just like 3 or 4 actual Lego cars. So you start off in a Mini, and then there's the Ferrari. And one of the first things when you get the Ferrari is you get to challenge a real Ferrari F40. And that was the thing that I kind of capped off my stream with, because it was like pretty hard. Because at some point the real Ferrari would just take off, and like I don't even know how to catch up to you. So it took a lot of retries and a little bit of cheesing and playing dirty to finally beat that thing. It was a stream, so I was like, all right, I don't need to do this the pro, perfect exact way.
How were you cheesing it?
Like using the restarts and rewinds,
gotcha.
And just finding that spot. Like, okay, this turn makes all the difference, so I got to get around this turn perfectly. So,
I guess I wouldn't expect a narrative from this, but is there any sort of context for why everything is Lego in the Forza Horizon world?
Well, you do go to a new area. It's Lego Valley. They throw some things out there like Lego technology, and like they sent us the kits and that kind of thing, but they don't really, there's not like a story to it.
Sure. What is kind of the scope of this thing? Like, how much is there to do?
There's a lot to do. I still had like tons of routes and things that I hadn't done. It'd be kind of hard for me to compare it to like the full map, but I would say it's probably easily like a third of the size of the normal map. Like there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of, you've got your stunt things going on, your danger signs. There's also these ramps that kind of like a Hot Wheels car or whatever. Like when you hit the ramp, it'll like accelerate you up the ramp to launch you. There's at some point, after you get the house built down, then there are these purple horizon bricks that they put throughout the map, so you can smash through those. The amount of challenges, like when you first get to that challenge screen and you just see like all the different things that are available, it's intimidating at first. It's just this huge spread of different things that you can do, but it's in true Horizon fashion. Like it lets you kind of go in different directions. So it's like, if you want to do stunts, do stunts. If you want to do races, do races. If you just want to go and find cool spots, then there's, it's like find the dinosaur graveyard. Okay, that looks sort of like it on the map. I'll go there and see if I can spot it.
I want to find the dinosaur graveyard. Which of those buckets I think most identifies you? Like, which one do you gravitate to the most?
I mean, when starting out, like just the discovery aspect of it, it's
good call.
It's a cool map. There's a lot of neat spots. I didn't even there's a section that you go through in the opening race that's like a ghost forest, and like now I'm thinking back, like I didn't even get to the ghost forest. I saw some ghosts around the lighthouse, but I don't know where the ghost forest is. So get back to that. I know there's also like a soccer stadium that I didn't get to, but it's really just. It's done so well, and it's cool to just go around the city and like look at buildings, and
definitely
there's still kind of this mix of like real stuff with Lego stuff on top of it, but there is a lot of Lego stuff and palm trees and things to smash through. There's certain parts of the roads that are like the Lego base that your car kind of makes like a grinding sound when you drive over
like gravel almost or something.
Yeah, kind of like gravel. And there's a lot there. It is kind of funny in a way, though, that it's mechanically it's still the same game. Like you're still driving the same way and having to go through races with the same amount of depth. It's just a very different looking area.
The Hot Wheels expansion was Forza Horizon 3, right?
Yeah.
And you did that.
Yeah.
How does this compare to that?
I mean, it's very different because the Hot Wheels thing focused a lot on having those long orange tracks.
Right.
And so it kind of has a little bit of a trade-off because those limit you in terms of exploring.
Yeah.
You don't just get to go anywhere. Like you're on these tracks.
You're on a Hot Wheels track, yeah.
Yeah. And there are spaces outside of that, but a lot of the world is kind of just these, long single lanes that you're going through. The other thing that they did with them, which was kind of cool, is that you could actually customize how those were put together. So you could take a section of the road and like swap it out with a turn or
Sure.
a straight or whatever you wanted to. Whereas Lego, it's just like a whole new area. So it's wide open and you can go kind of wherever you want and drive across fields. Oh, one thing that's also pretty cool is it preserves the whole seasons aspect. So right now it's winter in Forza Horizon 4. You get to Lego. It's winter in Lego as well.
Cool.
So they've thought through all of those little things in terms of how they're building that world.
Is there any element of Lego building in this expansion, or is it mostly...
I haven't seen
just the style
just building itself.
Okay.
No, yeah, I think it's the only thing is just that sense of seeing your house compound grow as you get through more challenges and progress.
Does the Legoland change the radio at all?
No.
Okay, so that's the same.
Yeah, there's the theme song or whatever when you do that first race, but that's
everything is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. But it sounds really fun.
Yeah, it is really
like
fun.
Forza Horizon 4, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of it. Is it's like it just reminds you of like how good Forza Horizon 4 actually is.
That is a game that someday I'd love to play a lot more of, and a pile of many games I'd love to play a lot more of. We ready for some caught in a frame trap action?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What triggered it this time is the demons actually like strongly hate Lego. They're Lincoln Logs demons, which like is so whatever I guess with them. How can you even reason with that?
Dumb demons.
The game that we're gonna do. The game that we're going to do this time is when was the last one? And so I have a bunch of series here.
Okay.
I've got 5 different series. And you have to tell me when the last game came out. And so the only stipulation is I'm not including like game collections. I'm not including remakes.
Okay.
And I'm not including remasters. So it is not necessarily the last numbered sequel, but kind of the last prominent, this matters to this universe game. But before we get to the game, this Caught in a Frame Trap is brought to you by some wonderful sponsors, the first being Greg, TheDarkKnight Kettering. Thank you, Greg. Next, we have Zoteg. Do you play Final Fantasy XIV? Are you on the Crystal Data Center? Search at Zoteg, that is XOTIG, on Twitter for a link to an EZA Crystal Discord server. Shadowbringers real soon, next week.
Oh, yeah.
Brad's excited. Thank you, Zoteg. After that, we've got JoJo's Dent Co. Thank you, JoJo's Dent Co. Next, we have Accounts Payable, who once again is going to give us a free shout-out. Is there anything we want to give a shout-out to? I actually have one.
Oh.
By the time you're watching this, it is very likely that Summer Games Done Quick is happening.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Which is not only super fun to watch, but promotes a great cause. So, yeah. Thank you, Accounts Payable, for letting me shout that out. Shout out.
Shout out.
After that, we have Gift of Heaven. Gift of Heaven is a free 3DS RPG which strives to be as funny as Earthbound, efficient as Chrono Trigger, and epic as Final Fantasy VI. Gift of Heaven quadruples every data limit of RPG Maker FES using passwords to unite 4 game files as one bold explosion. O.M. Hawkstelter is cooking the rip-roaring full blast, Token, Potter, Forrest Gump combo meal you deserve to eat, and them Hawkstelters don't skip on the shrimp. Gift of Heaven's 43-minute promotional short film, Symphonia Anathema, is now available on the official Gift of Heaven YouTube channel. You can download the prologue August 7th via the RPG Maker FES 3DS app. The first dungeon, which I just completed, will kill you several times as you learn because the 25 different enemy groups demand a larger number of strategies than a traditional JRPG dungeon. The goal is to maximize enemy variety, minimize repetition, and kick your butt. Thank you, Gift of Heaven. Next, we have Blue. Thank you, Blue. For our last regular sponsor, we have Jessie Blu, who says, "Hello, allies. It's my birthday this month and also the first anniversary of when I discovered a small band of adventurers led by Dungeon Master Ben Moore. In September of last year, I became a patron of Easy Allies, and over the past year, I have enjoyed watching them and seeing them reach for their dreams. This, in turn, has inspired me to reach for my own dreams, so after many years of feeling unfulfilled in my career, I am pleased to say I am finally preparing to cut a demo to get work as a voiceover actor. Nice. I decided that for my birthday, I wanted to give back to Easy A by sponsoring Frame Trap for the month of June. I also wanted to give each of you a chance to shout out to someone in your life that has inspired you to go after your dream. Family member, friend, teacher, anybody. And I want to say thank you to all 9 allies for working together to bring joy to their viewers in a world where, especially in the entertainment industry, love and respect are in short supply. I have to say, I can't wait someday to be voicing a game you are discussing. Anybody that has inspired you or been in your corner during tough times?
Oh, can I shout out both my parents?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they've always backed me up no matter what, and always let me follow my dreams, always helped me out any way they could.
That's
super
awesome.
Supportive, yep.
Parent Ellis love.
Yeah.
I was wrong. That is not our last regular sponsor. Our last regular sponsor is Circean Studios. Last but certainly not least, Circean Studios, creators of the hand-drawn mobile fighting game, Konsui Fighter. Konsui Fighter features 10 playable characters, a story mode with over 3 hours of content, local multiplayer, arcade, and training modes. Putting the power of a 90 fighter in your pocket, Konsui Fighter is available in early access today at konsuifighter.com/early. That is KONSUIFIGHTER.com/early. To celebrate our sponsorship with Frame Trap and the month of E3, early access will be 30% off during the month of June. Let the tournament of the mind begin.
My goodness. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, thank you. And now it is time for our mega sponsor, Heroic Replicas. The fine folks at Heroic Replicas design and fabricate true-to-form, high-quality replicas and props. From cosplay to keepsakes or all-metal creations, Heroic Replicas can make something special for you. Summer Games Done Quick 2019 is happening this week. It started on June 23rd. It's a week-long speedrunning live-streaming charity event that benefits Doctors Without Borders. Heroic Replicas provided the grand prize to their donation drive.
Nice.
If you donate over a certain amount over the course of the week, you'll get an entry. The grand prize is a replica Master Sword and an all-metal Hylian shield, which is pretty sick. Check out Summer Games Done Quick, and thank you, Heroic Replicas.
Thank you.
All right, we ready to play?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We ready to play? First one is when was the last... Oh, you just have to get the year right.
Okay.
And so both of you will probably guess a year. If both of you get it right, I'll give you both a point. And then if neither of you get it right, I'll give it to who was ever closer.
Okay.
When was the last Dino Crisis? That's what we're starting off with.
2002.
2001.
Brad was a little bit closer. It was 2003. Dino Crisis 3.
Oh, man.
When was the last Psychonauts game?
Oh, Psychonauts.
2016?
Oh, the last Psychonauts game. There was a VR game, I think. 2017?
Brad is right. It's 2017.
Yes.
I know it's
Blood got you on the right train of thought.
Yeah, thank you, Blood.
But then, it initially came out on PlayStation VR in 2017. Brad's ahead by 2. Blood still has a chance to come back by telling me when was the last Jak and Daxter game.
Oh, Jak and Daxter.
This one's a little tricky. I think.
I'll say 2003.
Okay.
2006.
Blood is closer. Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier, not counting the collection. It was a PSP game.
Oh,
came out in 2009.
Wait, was there there's the Jak game, right? Is that the one?
There's a Daxter game.
Oh, sorry.
That was before Lost Frontier.
Dude, there was 2? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier, 2009 PSP.
Damn.
Blood was on the board. When was the last Left 4 Dead game?
Left 4 Dead.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Oh, Left 4 Dead. 2012.
That's what I was going with, too. 2012. I'll do it.
You're both going 2012.
Yeah.
You're both wrong. It's 2009.
Oh,
wow.
What? It's been that long?
2009, Left 4 Dead 2.
Good lord.
Easy.
Your reaction is like making me doubt myself, but I swear that's what it was.
No, I mean, it totally could be.
All right, I'm not going to give either of you a point for that one.
Yeah.
When was the last Max Payne game?
2000. Come on, 2015?
Bloodworth.
2013?
Blood is closer. It was 2012 for Max Payne.
Wow, was that
3.
long ago? Good lord.
That is a long time ago.
I have good news and bad news. The bad news is neither one of you won. The good news is that you both won. You tied.
All right.
Which means you get to do my favorite thing for this segment. You both get to break us out of the frame trap. Whether you have to come up with some sort of combination attack to get us out of here.
I don't know, Bloodworth. What you?
I'm going to set up a volleyball.
Oh,
for
okay.
you to spike.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Spiked.
I just envision that as a sports anime. Just so you know.
Intended.
All right, I'm gonna look this up right now just to make sure. Yeah.
Left 4 Dead.
Yeah, Left 4 Dead 2. There it is.
God, 2009?
November 17th, 2009.
So they came out
PC
back to
and
back
Xbox
then.
360.
I think they were like a year apart or two.
Yeah,
because I remember we were doing previews of the first Left 4 Dead GT.
It was a year apart. So the first Left 4 Dead was
2008.
November 17th, so same month.
Then nothing for 10 years.
Yeah. We said it multiple times on Frame Trap, but
Dude, I miss Left 4 Dead.
Was the new one Back 4 Blood?
Their new game? Yeah.
Yeah. Not Left 4 Dead specifically.
But yeah,
Left 4
their
Dead.
new game.
Yeah. All right, we have a couple more games to talk about. One that I don't think is going to take too long, but I do want to bring up. I just finished it, and then Brad, you also finished it. A Plague Tale: Innocence. Something we talked about last time on Frame Trap.
I've got it sitting on top of my PS4.
It's ready.
Yeah. Part of the reason I want to bring it back up is just to stress to people. I know it's a busy time. I know there's a lot of games coming out competing for your attention, but I really think this is a good one.
Yeah, it's good.
And it's not that long.
No.
Brad, I don't think my memory's a little blurry, but I don't think when I talked about it, you talked about it on Frame Trap.
Maybe. I don't remember.
I don't know. Could have been.
Yeah.
But having played all the way through it, what was your general impression of it?
Cool environments. I like the characters. Some of the encounters are a little goofy, not smooth, I would say.
Sure.
Like there's a couple of moments in the game where you have to so you don't really physically attack anyone in this game in the sense of you actually getting up to them. You have a sling you mostly use for most of the game to do.
Well, you have that stuff that you can get in their face. And
yeah, but it's not like when you're in a combat encounter,
right?
You're using the sling, and sometimes it's just you get rushed by a bunch of guys, and you have to hit him in the head most of the time, and it's not the smoothest thing, but it can get the job done.
I totally see where you're coming from there. I actually felt like the combat was really solid and worked for the sling and how the stealth mechanics that they were going for. I thought it was actually pretty great until maybe the very end where
that's when they start throwing waves of guys at you.
You just get waves of guys at you, and sometimes it feels like this isn't quite as fast or snappy as you need it to be, and so I feel like I'm getting through this through trial and error rather than
they're okay, a guy spawns there now. Yeah. Now I know. It
wasn't too bad, but yeah, I totally see where you're coming from. How did you feel about the story? It's a very story-focused game.
I liked it. I think it has really good character moments. You're pretty much following these two characters the whole game, brother and sister. You meet characters along the way. I like a lot of them. You meet some other characters I think are really cool. Like I said, I think the coolest part for me about the game is just going through the environments. It's France and the 1300s, something like that. So you're going through what you would expect in France, towns. You're going through battlefields. You're going through ruined castles. It's all really cool. Going through sweet churches. Right. It's mostly a stealth game. It's really fun stealthing around through stuff. It's not the most intense stealth game I'd say out there, but it's pretty satisfying going through there. But the coolest part about the game is the rats, I would say. That's the standout feature. Pretty much throughout the game, you're avoiding rats who have essentially the Black Plague, I guess, and it's taking over. You're using fire to maneuver through all these rats. It's just really cool moments of you going through swarms of rats where death is literally a foot away from you the whole time as you're just moving through areas of fire. Just cool little stuff like that.
Yeah. And it's something that I mentioned last time in Frame Trap, but I want to emphasize now that I've finished the game, is just how tight it is. Like, they'll introduce the rats, and it's like, hey, if you walk into these rats, you will just be immediately murdered, so don't do that.
Yes.
And like Brad said, you have to use flame to kind of manipulate them down certain paths, but they keep adding wrinkles to this stuff in a really great way. You start using them as weapons, where it's like, oh, hey, an enemy is holding a lantern. You break that lantern, it'll kill that enemy.
Get swarmed, yeah.
And just... it becomes kind of part of your combat repertoire, but you're never like fighting too much or stealthing too much. It's like, okay, you'll do some fighting and then you'll do some sneaking, and then there'll be a new kind of puzzle that you'll have to solve. Or it's like, hey, you're manipulating light again, but you're manipulating with a brand new type
really
of item.
light puzzle elements.
Yeah. And it's a pretty small cast of characters, which I like, because they do kind of keep introducing people throughout the story, but it never goes overboard, and everybody feels like they have a strong purpose, and it feels like everybody gets at least some time to develop in a meaningful way, which I really like. And I think the story is pretty effective.
Sure.
As well. It's not maybe the most unpredictable thing in the world, but where they end up feels... believable. I don't want to get too much into the ending, but it was definitely a realistic kind of outlook that I appreciated. And yeah, just a kind of fun, interesting, affecting game that came out of nowhere. Which I really liked.
It's cool. Check it out. It's not too long.
No. Well,
it's probably like 8 hours.
Yeah, it's probably about
8 or 10 maybe.
I guess a criticism that I do have is you can get these materials throughout the world, and then you can go to these benches and upgrade yourself, and you can get an upgrade where you don't need benches. But I don't think the upgrades are like that big of a deal.
Like the sling thing, you could upgrade your sling, but I feel like that doesn't really matter until the end of the game where you're fighting like the waves of enemies, I guess.
Right, and so the upgrades kind of fall into this position where I don't think it's fair to call them absolutely worthless, but they're not like so substantial. Like there weren't moments where I was like, thank God for that upgrade. And so it's a system that is there that doesn't really feel like it's adding a whole lot. And so that would probably be my one of my bigger criticisms of the game.
Yeah.
Our last game, Daniel Bloodworth, is F1 2019, which you said you haven't gotten to play a whole lot of, but you're very impressed with.
Yeah, I'm also slammed with like 3 racing games at the same time this week. It's like, okay. But yeah, so F1... if you didn't catch my E3 impressions, I've been out of the loop on F1 for several years, and so some of this stuff may be a culmination of things that they've been doing over the past couple of years. And
it's so frustrating because Blood, you'll like come in to the office and we'll all be wanting to talk about F1 with you, and it's like, come on, get caught up.
But it's interesting because I was sort of I was there when Codemasters first started doing the F1 series and first got that license, and at first, like they had this big ambitious idea of, okay, you're gonna race, but you're also gonna live the life for the driver, and I just don't think they really had the resources to like pull that all off at first, and so like you sat it through some of these like boring like press interview things, and it was all like kind of stiff, and so they backed away from that for a couple of years. And just focused on the racing, and now this stuff is like it's back, and it actually feels good, and it feels worthwhile, and it like sort of brings that human element back into the series, so you're not just in just like this stale simulator kind of experience. And so where it starts off is these kind of canned scenarios as you starting off as a Formula 2 driver, and the first 2 races are actually starting off midway through the race because like something happened and you have to react to that. And so the first one that you do, your turbo's gone out, and so your car's not running at optimum level, and your team is telling you on the radio, it's like, hey, you've got to let your teammate pass and get around you because it's going to be the best thing for the team. And so and you have like in the cockpit, you have that choice as to whether or not to let them pass. And if you go like a little bit without doing it, they're like, hey, like I know you don't want to do this, but like honestly, like your car, it's not going to make it through. And then you do let them pass, and then probably no matter what, if you do it soon enough, that allows your teammate to actually get ahead of everyone and win the race. And then now the kind of the press interview thing is back, but they feel more, again, like more natural, more human. Like they even have like this moment where the interviewer is like, okay, so sort of stand like this and like look at the camera, and like it feels like a real setup for doing an interview. And based on how you answer the questions, it kind of puts points towards whether you're more of a showman or more of a sportsman-like driver.
Okay.
And that influences how the different F1 teams later on, when you choose what team to be a part of, how they respond to you and how much like value and negotiating ability that you have.
Okay, so if they like your vibe, you could get more money from them.
Right. Or other perks and that sort of thing.
But it doesn't necessarily eliminate those options. So even if they're not really gelling with you, you can still choose that path.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
And then
that's pretty awesome.
And then there's also so the second scenario, there's like a rival driver that kind of cuts you off and breaks your wing, and then so like you have to try to like get ahead and get back in front of that driver anyways. And what's interesting after that race is you actually have this interaction with him in the pits where he totally blames you for ramming into him, and he's upset because like you stole his points because they gave him a penalty and all of this stuff, and so it kind of sets up this rivalry. And then, but you also have your teammate there defending you and talking. He's like, "Hey, don't let him get under your skin."
Dude, this F1 visual novel.
That is a visual. Yeah.
And so that's all really good. And then you get into you get past all of that, and when you're picking your team, again, it's not just like a standard. There is like a standard menu, but like they actually bring you into like 2 months later, you like walk into your agent's office and you discuss your options with your agent, and you get to look through and see all the different teams and see what their expectations are. And it's like okay, if you try to sign up for one of the the premier teams, they're going to expect you to like get at least third place like right away, and then you kind of like work your way down the ranks of not only again the vibe that those teams are looking for, but like where their expectations are, and sort of in a way it's almost like setting a difficulty level for you right off the start.
This is so awesome because I don't know anything about F1, and just getting into it seems very intimidating. But this game, like I wouldn't even necessarily need to approach it from that angle. Like I just want to see what decisions I can make and where my story goes,
right?
And what my team is all about.
And I'm curious how much of that is actually going to play out in terms of like once you actually get into the full career, like how much of those interactions happen. Because obviously to me, this is just sort of the framework. This is sort of the introduction. Once you get into full race weekends, it's a whole different story. But yeah, you want to.
Oh, I just wanted to ask. So you said there's like different personalities that you can have. You can be a showman, or you can be like a kind of a straight-laced sportsman-like person. Which one did you go with?
Well, that's the kind of the thing is I've just been sort of picking answers naturally, and so sometimes the points will go one way, and sometimes they'll go the other.
Bloodworth is unpredictable. You don't know what you're gonna get
cool and
when you sign him to the team.
But once, but as you're talking about being intimidated getting into this stuff, this is what I'm really liking about F1, because once 2019 is now, once I'm getting into this, like you don't just start off in a race, and this has been true of past games, is like if you want to do like the more authentic experience, like you've got practice rounds and qualifying rounds and then the race itself. And so it like just getting through a single race weekend is a pretty long investment. But here, there's even more put into that, more thought put into that, because I don't just like show up and then start on a practice session. To like walk me into the pits and like, okay, here's your workstation, and like you go through your workstation and here's your emails, and you see like all of this stuff to where like they've given like lip service to things like your team doing research and development and all of this,
right? But
now there's actually like a skill tree for your car. And so you look in and you can go in all of these different directions. Like you can go for your powertrain or your aerodynamics or durability or like just the overall like build of your chassis. And these things, like there's still like a realistic sense of how these things work in that if we want the engineers to work on the powertrain, okay, that'll be available 2 weeks from now, 2 races from now when that actually gets delivered. And the way that these things work is the practice round now isn't just about you going out and spending a half hour getting to know the course. There are all of these different, they call them programs. So there's like objectives that you can choose from. So the one where you do get familiar with the course, what they do is they put like these gates on the course. There's like little blue holographic things. And so you've got to, in order to achieve the goal, you've got to hit all of those gates, not every one, but enough to get enough points. But not only hit them, but hit them with enough speed so that like you're actually like getting your way around the track appropriately. And then I also did one for tire wear and for fuel usage. And those are both things that, in previous games, somebody will get on the radio and is like, hey, you got to manage your tires better. Like, hey, you're running low on fuel. But then it'd just be like this frustrating thing is like, okay, well, what? Like, nobody's taught me how to do this. And like here, right off the bat, they're teaching you, they've got a meter when you're going around those corners to show like, okay, this is how much you're degrading your tires. This is how much fuel you're spending. And they tell you like up front to conserve fuel, what you want to do is just coast into those corners, like let off the gas and coast in that corner. And then when you're coming out of the corner, be a little bit lighter on your acceleration. But you can see in real time, like how doing that is impacting that and really learn how to make that work. And then as you're doing these things in the practice rounds, that's when they're getting the data, and it's essentially points that you use towards that upgrade tree. So the more points that you have, the more you can upgrade your car throughout the season, and like really like making that a part of the experience and like having a more, well-rounded like F1 experience, because F1 it's not just about how well the drivers are doing, it's like how well their car holds up, how well that they improve the car over the course of the season.
In this upgrade tree, what sort of things are you upgrading, and how substantial is each individual upgrade as you're progressing?
I'm not sure I could say how substantial they are, like as you're progressing, but like again, like your aerodynamics are going to impact how well you can turn, how quickly you can turn. There are also different setups so that you can focus more on aerodynamics and getting around the turns, or you can focus more on your top speed. And so same thing with your upgrade tree. Like your powertrain is going to affect like how high your top speed can get. But if it's not balanced out with the aerodynamics and the chassis, then you're going to be having to deal with drag and that kind of thing. And then the durability, I can see more likely chances of things on your car just breaking unpredictably if you don't invest in durability.
Did you play F1 2018 at all?
No, so that's what I'm saying. I've been a couple of years off, so I don't know. Okay. Some of these things could be an amalgamation of things that have built up.
Right, because everything that you're saying, it just, based on the last time that you checked in, it seems like they completely overhauled so much that it sounds really, really impressive. But I'd be interested to see like how this directly compares to 2018, because if it's a huge improvement over 2018, like hats off for adding so much stuff.
Yeah, I know that the Formula 2 thing is new for sure. I'm pretty sure that some of the upgrading and stuff has already been there. I'm not sure about all of the like practice objectives and stuff, but I think that those things are the most interesting, because like I think what it's doing really well, and what I really appreciate with Gran Turismo Sport as well, is it's teaching you how to be a better driver. No matter how much experience you put in, like here are ways that you can improve. With like the Forza series, like I felt like that's where I first started getting into more simulation-based racers, and it kind of had that in the fact that it gave you more credits for turning off different assists. But as the years have gone by, it just sort of feels like they've kind of just coasted on the same sort of mechanics and not really done anything more to introduce you to better concepts. And it's just like, okay, we're just going to like throw a bunch of cars at you and like, here's the sports, here's this muscle car versus that muscle car, and like they don't really like do anything to really. And in fact, in like 7, I felt like they actually took a turn back with all the modifications and stuff that's essentially made some of that like not matter. So that's why like I kind of like where Gran Turismo Sport or F1 are at right now, where it's like, yeah, you don't know anything about this, it's fine. We're gonna like walk you through it.
I guess maybe on the other side of that, it's doing such a good job of teaching you, and I know you've been away from these games for a while, but do you ever have those moments where it's like, I already know this, and we're spending a lot of time on this concept that I've already encountered a bunch?
So far, nothing has felt like that to me. The only thing it doesn't even matter, is when your teammate and people talk to you sometimes, I almost feel like they're talking down to you a little bit. Like, I don't feel like I'm on equal terms. It's like they're trying to, like, include the tutorial with this conversation.
Okay.
And, like, if my teammate and I are on the same Formula 2 team, like, they're talking to me like I don't know anything, or like I'm just gonna, like, I'm gonna show you the ropes kind of feeling. I'm like, wait, but I'm on your team, man. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a difficult position to be in, where you have to address the player and the character, and you need to make the character seem exciting and part of this team, but you're also to be like, you don't know what any of this is. Yeah, that's a weird thing to balance. I also have to say, how cool is it that on this Frame Trap, you've brought 3 different racing games, and they're all so wildly different from each other. Yeah. But that you were able to speak so highly about all of them, I think is really
But I mean, to answer your question in terms of those practice things, like, number 1, they're kind of optional.
Oh.
Like, you don't have to do that in a practice. You can skip a practice session entirely if you don't feel like you need it. Mm-hmm. They're there to get, those research points and help you go through the research tree.
But I feel like you would want the research points.
Yeah, you would want the research points. But then the other thing is every track is different. Learning to manage those turns and such, like those practice sessions are there for a reason, and even if all you're doing is getting to know the track, like, that's, important, and figuring out like how you can do that, how you can conserve fuel on that track is going to be very different. How you conserve fuel on the next track.
Do you ever get burned out with racing games? Because I definitely have moments where if I play a lot of a certain type of genre, it's not that it's bad. I just need something else. And so I guess, does that ever wear on you? Whether it's like grinding through a racing campaign or just grinding out online or something, do you ever get tired of that?
I mean, it's weird in terms of feeling tired of it. I mean, I definitely, like, there's other things that I want to play, but it's like, one of the dilemmas I have is like, okay, I've started all 3 of these games, and like all 3 of these games I kind of want to get deeper into.
Right.
So it's difficult. I mean, F1 is definitely, like I said, it's the most intense. Again, it will take, probably a couple hours to, just get through that first race weekend. Like, I played it for like 2.5 hours this morning. Like, I didn't finish the first real race. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of getting into that first practice session is all I had time for. So there's definitely a lot of investment in that.
Obviously, just when we're assigned to cover different things, or when we choose to cover different things, there are the other thing, like a different game will come at the expense of that, even if we do really want to play it. Is there anything, I guess, right now that you're not playing that you really wish you were?
I mean, there's a giant list of things.
But like the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I don't know what the initial thing right now is. Because there's just so many things. Mm-hmm. So there's Bloodstained, there's Sekiro, there's, I had started Red Dead back at the beginning of the year and has never really gotten back into Red Dead since I got knocked out of it. Red
Dead is, the 2 of them that you named there, like Red Dead and Sekiro, they're just like such beasts of games for completely different reasons. Right. And they take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And so,
a lot of time, a lot of effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, sometimes, like, I'll end up just playing through something shorter because He's like, oh, I know I can get through this and knock it out. You know, I played through the Crysdale demo this week.
I still need to do that, Blood.
Yeah.
And it looks so good. I agree with you. I think that's something why with Plague Tale, it was very easy to be like, well, I'm halfway through this already. Might as well just see the end. But it was also very, very good. Not just the length that was an influence on that. Hopefully what was also very, very good is this week's HOTTAKE! So, I would not say that either of you are the biggest Pokemon fans at Easy Allies, but you have an interest.
Yes.
There's a little bit of
I always want to play more than I end up playing.
Right.
Again,
right.
Going back to our last point.
There has been some Pokemon controversy going on, and that's what I want to talk about today.
Yeah.
Referencing some Polygon articles for this information, so thank you to Polygon. So the controversy is you can't bring all of your Pokemon into Pokemon Sword and Shield. Only Pokemon that are in the Galar region can be brought over from Pokemon Home into Pokemon Sword and Shield. And so that means that maybe, potentially, some of your favorite Pokemon will not be there. Even if you've been carrying them from multiple games, you may not be able to bring them into Pokemon Sword and Shield. People are very, very upset about this, massively downvoting Pokemon videos, coming up with hashtags like Bring Back the National Dex. People have been very outspoken and vocal about this. Now, they've said part of the defense for this decision was that they wanted Pokemon animations to be of high quality, and they wanted them to be more unique and expressive. This is not strong reasoning for a lot of people because they're looking at some of these animations, these battle animations in Pokemon Sword and Shield, and they're saying, why aren't these better? But that is a reason that they have brought up. And game balance was also used as a reason. You've got more than 800 Pokemon. That's a lot of things to balance and to consider. So that is another reason they've brought up. It's unclear at this time exactly how large the Galar region Pokedex, the Galar region being the region in Pokemon Sword and Shield, will be. And it should also be said that for something like Pokemon Bank, you are paying a fee for that service. You are paying a fee to store and transfer Pokemon, $5 per year is what the price on that is. And so I want this is really bothered people, and I have my own opinions on this. But before we get into that, I want to know, based on all information, how do you think about the decision?
Sucks for people who have been carrying their Pokemon forever. That's a bummer. Like me, it doesn't affect me, but I could totally understand why people are frustrated, especially about the excuse of animations, I guess, where it's like people are, I don't have context for past animations. I haven't played since Pearl, so I don't know.
Right.
But like, that's a bummer.
Brett, let me throw this at you then. So, despite not really having these Pokemon that you want to bring over or having that attachment, you are going to play Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Correct, yeah.
That's something you've mentioned.
Yes.
Not trying to
no,
put you on the hook or anything.
I was like, I am, right? I was just thinking about it.
Yeah, that's just something that you've mentioned. So let's just say hypothetically that you do. Does that make you worried? Like, let's say you get really attached to your team or you get really into it and you do catch a bunch of guys and you're like, oh man, I may not be able to bring these Pokemon over into the next game if there are these or some sort of limitation. Does it plant a seed of doubt?
For me, no. I'm okay with starting with new Pokemon over again. I'm not gonna put Pokemon in a bank or anything like that. Like I'm just not that attached to Pokemon themselves, I guess. Like if I was, the farthest I would go is I would name a Pokemon maybe. Then in the next game, I would just make a new one with the same name. That's probably as far as I go. So for me, it's not really a big deal to me.
Okay. So despite it not being, I guess, a big personal issue to you or something that's really going to affect the way that you play, do you kind of removed from yourself, how do you feel about the situation?
Oh, like I said, it's a bummer for people.
Do you think it's something that they should change?
If they can, I think it'd be great. Even if they can't do it right away, I think eventually being able to do it would be great for a lot of people. So hopefully, yeah.
What's your take on it, Blood?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I feel like at some point we just gotta be realistic.
Okay, so what's realistic?
Like at some point, like it not everyone can be in every game, and maybe maybe they're still in the bank and you can bring them in the next game and not this one or something like that. But I don't know. Like at some point, some of those guys have got to be duds too, right? Like there's got to be some Pokemon duds. It's like you really want that one. We got to make sure you want
right.
That
but that's a very subjective thing.
Yeah, sure.
Where something that might be a total
not
dud.
Not necessarily subjective if there's some kind of statistics backing things up.
Sure, but even if it's like a very small percentage of people that like a particular Pokemon, even if there's some sort of statistical data out there, I mean, those people still exist. It still matters to them. But you're saying at a certain point you have to move forward regardless.
Right. And I think that, I think that in a way that it can hamstring your game design if you are just constantly trying to, going back, Gran Turismo, great example, like Gran Turismo 5, like, got to bring all the cars that have been in all the other games, and these cars look like PS2 cars. Right. Like they just do. They just look bad, and so I can see that trying to put that amount of detail, and again, even though this Pokemon is in the most amazing looking game, it is the most detailed Pokemon game that's ever been like a full-fledged real Pokemon game. And so, there's a lot of just utter manpower that has to go into that.
Yeah, I definitely see your point, and I think that those are good things to bring up. However, I do think the messaging on this has been way out of whack, because this information is coming out now during E3. Pokemon Sword and Shield was announced before this. And then it wasn't that long before E3 that we learned about Pokemon Home. And during that presentation, the attitude that I got is we realize how important your Pokemon are to you and how attached you get to them. And so while I also think a lot of people are going to be like Brad, where it's just like, it's not that big of a deal to me. I think what's really frustrating about it is it doesn't feel like it's kind of honoring this precedent that they've already set.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this the first Pokemon game they're doing this for?
Right. So in every other game, you have been able at some point to bring over Pokemon.
Right.
And, that might be post-game, which people are okay with. It's like, hey, you can't do it right away, but you can bring Pokemon over in the post-game.
Cool. Yeah.
And there's always been this really strong focus of, hey, we're moving to it's been handhelds, but we're moving to a new generation. We'll figure out a way to get all of your Pokemon there. And I agree that as long as the number of Pokemon keep going up, maybe that is a more and more difficult thing to solve. But that's kind of what you signed up for.
Yeah.
Where it's like if it's something that you've been doing for a very long time, you're going to get, if your messaging is, we understand how important it is to you, and this is really important to us, I do think it is odd to say, well, now we can't do it. And it's just, again, the way that it came out. If we had started conversations with this, or if the reasons felt, I think, a little bit more solid, or like backed up in ways that people could clearly see, that would be something. But it's weird, I think, in one hand to be like, we understand how important this is to you, and on the other being like, this is way too much work.
That's the weird part, because they just talked about that, like the whole bank thing and all that stuff like that, but then just being like, right. It's like, not this time. And like, whole reason you would want to do it to get ready for the next game.
Right, and I'm not necessarily not completely on their side. I do think it is a tremendous amount of work, and I don't want to undersell that, and I do think there are logistical problems there, but again, I think it is how you present it. And the other thing is, I also think that this is kind of the first mainline Pokemon series on something that you're going to be able to play on your TV, and I think it's a big deal to people, and I think it is something that is very exciting. And so to feel like it's been limited in this way is disappointing. And I do think Pokemon Sword and Shield has been kind of underselling people up until this point as well, hardcore fans especially. I was somebody that was actually very, very excited about it. And then I played the E3 demo and felt like, obviously a very small demo at E3, not going to necessarily be indicative of the full game, and maybe there's a bunch of other things that they're going to announce. But I felt like that demo itself, in isolation, was very underwhelming. And so to kind of have that underwhelming sense just on its own, and then to hear that you can't bring in all the Pokemon. Again, like Brad, not something that super affects me. I don't have all of this storage of Pokemon that I'm bringing up, but it just... Why not take more time to do whatever it takes? Like, if you are going to allow the transfer of Pokemon from Pokemon that are in the region, why not delay the game? Like, this is a game that people have been looking forward to for forever. People have wanted a console Pokemon for forever. Why not delay it to make that happen?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how long the delay takes, and they probably want to hit that date for the holidays.
Yeah. Right.
So that's probably why. Money.
Right. But then you have Animal Crossing. It's hard because I can't speak into the internal logistics of a company like Nintendo and exactly what's going on and what their specific demands are. But you have an Animal Crossing delay, and the messaging is like, we need extra time to make the game right. And I feel like that is kind of a mentality that Nintendo has adopted with other delays. And I think that just based on how outspoken people have been, it would really mean a lot to a lot of people.
Right. I wonder how, like, if they have data of like how many people actually do this, and if it's worth it to them right now to delay the whole game and miss the holiday season. I don't know if it sounds like it's not worth it to them. So probably that's why.
They have gone out there and said that there are no plans right now to update it down the line and do this stuff. Blood, do you think this is a case of a very vocal minority? Do you think this will actually affect the reception of Pokemon Sword and Shield to a substantial degree?
I think it's most likely a vocal minority, but I don't know like what their, what the subscription numbers on Pokemon Bank and that kind of thing are like. I know that to me it seems like a neat idea to bring your Pokemon forward with you, but it's not something that I've ever really taken advantage of in any solid way. But again, I haven't been as strongly attached to the series as some other people.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really interested. I always think there's tremendous value in trying when possible, and it's not always possible, but trying when possible to please and honor your most dedicated following.
Of course.
Because I do think that has a rippling effect where they're the people that, if they like your game, they're going to be the most vocal about it. Like if Pokemon is their thing, if it is their number one obsession, then they're going to be the ones getting out there talking about it nonstop, advocating for it, getting people to play it, introducing it. Because people do respond to that enthusiasm. And I think the reverse is true. Again, it's hard to tell to which degree, but I think if you do upset that crowd, they're not going to let it go, and they're going to keep talking about it. And that has to have some effect, I would imagine. And yeah, I do think another thing to bring up is, like, yes, this problem, not having the national decks, is an issue that people are being very vocal about, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like there's anything in Sword and Shield that are exciting people enough to kind of like fight against this. It's not like, hey, we don't have this thing, but we have this super cool new thing that is going to make up for it. There doesn't seem to be anything in place so far. Like, there are things that people are looking forward to.
Well, I mean, just the idea of having a right camera control and be able to play on a console is enough for me to play this game.
Yes. But that's not a universal thing. It's like, hey, you have this camera control in certain areas.
But to me, that's like a big step up for the series.
Yeah,
as small as that sounds, like the Pokemon series, from what I remember, is just like minimal upgrades throughout, very small upgrades. But now this finally feels like a bigger upgrade, I guess. So to me, that's exciting. But I still get it.
Yeah, I do think it is a big deal and something that people want, right? Like that was something that Kyle was really passionate about, and rightfully so. But it is also disappointing. Like, everything just kind of feels like it's coming with a catch. But it's like, hey, we're making the transition to Switch, but you can't bring all your Pokemon. Hey, we're going to allow you to have more camera control, but only in these specific areas. And so I think it is just that caveat with things that is causing a lot of skepticism, I would say. And I think it's important to point out that, like, my opinion and our opinion as Easy Allies is not fully written on Pokemon Sword and Shield, but it's been interesting to see excitement or skepticism grow or decrease as time has gone on and as more information has come out. What do you think is the right call, Blood? If you were Game Freak, Nintendo, the Pokemon Company, and you were getting kind of this outburst of concern, how would you deal with it going forward?
I mean, yeah, it's tough because I feel like, you know, part of it is probably that they designed this game in a certain way to, you know, like they wanted to take their resources and spend it on other things rather than just replicating the same Pokemon. But yeah, I mean, I think if they could put the resources into it, I would see the value in doing some kind of update after the fact. You know, to let people to bring those in, like, even if they're not going to be running around the wild area or anything like that. It's like, oh, if you have this Pokemon, then you can have it in your party.
Yeah.
But
yeah, even if they just roll them out slowly over time, I think that'd be, a lot of people would be happy with that. Like, we're going to do this amount of Pokemon here, then later on we'll continue to add them in over time. I don't know if they'll be able to throw like a couple hundred in at a time or whatnot. I don't know how long it takes. But I think if they were like actively working towards it, I think people would be happy.
Yeah, and I guess maybe the last thing that I want to say is I mentioned how valuable I think it is to honoring your most dedicated fans. I do think that is important. I think there's a line with that, right? Like, you can't, every time people get upset, that doesn't necessarily mean like you can change everything. But I think it goes a long way when you feel like you're being listened to.
Yes.
And it feels like the company is really valuing your voice and like, hey, like, we don't agree with everything and we can't change everything, but we're at least willing to have a conversation with you. I think maybe the frustration some people are feeling with the Pokemon series in general is it can kind of feel like a stone wall where it's like, hey, I've been following the series forever and you're not making these changes. You're not, like, are we ever on the same page here? And I think that can be a little bit frustrating. So I think a little bit would go a long way. And even if it is a slow update, like you're saying, I think people would feel like they're being heard.
Yeah.
And that would matter a lot.
Yeah. I guess, again, my main concern is, what does this mean going forward, right? Does it feel like they're just like tied to this
I think it's going to hit a brick wall
number
eventually completely. Like, where they're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off on like doing this and take the hit, I guess, because like I don't know how long they can keep this. Like, when the Pokemon gets to like over 1,000 or something like that, because it's gonna happen.
This is just like, this idea has not been fully thought through, so keep that in mind. But let's say they announce the 9th generation of Pokemon and they go, we've got a ton of these guys for this generation. We're not going to add anything. We're just going to focus on enhancing
everything
that we've already done, and like adding more new ways to play. Do you think that kind of mentality would work for a new generation, or do you think people would be disappointed?
I think people would be pissed too about that. Like, I don't know how many Pokemon they add each generation, but to me it'd be cool if they even just added like 20 or something like that.
Sure.
To me, the idea is that's cool.
So you're saying, like, no matter what, there should be at least some.
I think that people want that every Pokemon game, but at the same time, if they just improved upon everything else, to me, because I'm not a big Pokemon guy, I think that'd be fine too. Because there's so many Pokemon I don't even know about at this point. There's like 800. I remember the first 150 probably. That's about it.
Sure.
I think they're also, depending on how they're doing this and managing this workload, I mean, there's also the potential that once they've done these, then it'll be easier to upgrade to the next game, right?
Going
like
from
you're
3DS to a console or Switch, pretty big leap.
Yeah, that's a big leap. So like you can see that like with like sports games or whatever, right? Like once you get that first sports game of the console generation, like most people are still going to play the old gen version because this new one is not there yet. So I could kind of potentially see that we're like, okay, this time around won't have as many, but since that work can carry into the next game, then they'll be able to put more work into adding more the second time around, third time around.
All right. Well, thank you for having the Pokemon discussion with me. Are we ready for some emails?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Our first email comes in from Tyler with the saying, "Hey, hope you all had an excellent E3. I know I certainly did, and it was great to see you all there." So I don't know if you guys ran into Tyler, but he definitely came up to different allies, told me a great story about Doug Bowser, which he mentions in his email. He says, as someone who follows the game industry closely and who is contemplating it as a career path, E3 is such a fun opportunity to see people who many would not recognize, but who I view as sort of celebrities. Getting to take a picture with Todd Howard, Junichi Masuda, and see people like Miyamoto walk past is incredible. The most starstruck of the bunch, I felt, though, was sitting by Doug Bowser for the Cyberpunk demo and seeing him chuckle at the gritty violence. So this got me thinking, in your time in the game industry, what is the most starstruck or fanboy you felt, whether it be a convention, interview, or something else entirely?
Miyazaki. Hidetaka Miyazaki was pretty hype. I got to shake his hand. That was hype. Shaking Katase's hand was also sweet that I got to do this year.
Nice.
And anytime I saw Nomura was like super cool too.
Yeah, the first time that I saw Nomura in person was at that
Kingdom Hearts event,
and just you were there with me, Brad, and just seeing how just tired he was.
Yeah, I was like, just let the man sleep.
Poor Nomura, no. Blood, most starstruck you've been.
I mean, I guess the easiest thing is just Miyamoto Wind Waker interview at DICE 2003, whenever, and that's he was there along with Dennis Dyack talking about Eternal Darkness as well, and so I had Miyamoto and Onuma sign my Japanese copy of the Wind Waker.
That's pretty cool.
That is hype.
There's a bunch I could probably pull from, but one that is coming to mind right now is just Kojima. So it was like pre-Ground Zeroes, I think, and we went to the Kojima Productions place in Los Angeles, and just seeing him there in person for the first time, it was like, hey, you made the game that is my favorite game, and were it not for me encountering that game at the time that I did, I probably wouldn't be doing this. And so, yeah, I think it is always kind of just this crazy moment where you meet somebody that feels like they're indirectly responsible for a lot of things that have happened in your life, or at least influenced those decisions. So, yeah, Kojima was a big one.
Nice.
Still hoping for that Kamiya interview someday. We'll see.
Someday.
Our next email comes in from Troy.
Oh, sorry. Can I bring up one more moment?
Please.
When, I think last year, a couple years ago, we were playing Bloodstained, and Igarashi was there.
Yeah.
Behind us watching us play. That was super hype.
Yeah, seeing Igarashi with the whip and the hat and interviewing him was really cool.
He lives the gimmick, baby.
There's also, I think it might have been that same year at DICE. I was just like in the elevator with Yu Suzuki and like,
dude,
just trying to like hold my tongue. Like, okay.
Yeah, it's always weird when anyone, because when you do this, like, it gets to the point with you guys where I know we're talking to a sizable number of people, but it doesn't feel like that.
Right.
It just feels like, oh, I'm talking to Brad and Blood about games like we do. And so it's always weird when somebody is like, hey, I work at this, insert prominent video game thing here. I listen to your stuff all the time. It's like, oh, of course, but you just don't think about it. And so it's always kind of a moment, I guess, when that happens. Next email comes in from Troy. Final Fantasy VII original or remake first. Hi, allies. Final Fantasy is probably my favorite franchise in gaming, but oddly enough, I haven't gotten around to playing it. Its most famous entry, Final Fantasy VII. I think part of this is because I psyched myself out when the remake came out, thinking I'd play that instead. I regret the decision now because I feel like I should play the original to give me a new understanding and appreciation for the remake. The only problem is that I don't know if I can fit in the original before March. I'm going to be starting my last year of college in the fall, and I'm currently chipping away at a small handful of different backlog games, including the PS1 Classic version of Final Fantasy VIII. So now I'm wondering, what should I do? Should I play the original first to have that experience, or the remake? Or am I okay to play part 1 before the original game? I would very much value your professional opinion.
Ideally, I think you should play the original, because the remake is going to be very different from the original. Yeah. From like what I've seen, it's very different. Luckily nowadays too, you can just cruise through that game. You can activate cheats anytime you want, so you don't have to get stuck on anything. If you just want to go through the game and see the story, it's easier than ever, I would say. I would try to fit it in if you could.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think ideally they're kind of being the key word, where it's like, if you can play the original, I do think it's going to enhance your enjoyment of the remake because you're able to make those comparisons constantly. But a couple of things that I want to bring up. The first is that you're like, oh man, I need to do this by March. Like, no, you don't. No. Like, if you need some extra, if you really want to play the original, take all the time you need. The remake's not going to like come out in the March and then disappear.
Right.
You don't have to play it right away. I know that can be hard because you want to be there in the moment and the zeitgeist talking about it. I get that. I understand. But it'll still be around. Also, it's just video games, man. It's not like your education, where doing things at a certain order or time will be very beneficial for your life.
Right. They're not going anywhere.
Right. If this is your favorite franchise, there's not really a wrong answer here. And so, like, don't harbor this guilt or a shame or anything like that. It's okay.
Just do what you can.
I'd also say that, I mean, what's coming out in March is still pretty much disc 1. Yeah, not even disc 1.
Not even disc 1.
So maybe just play like the first bit of Final Fantasy 7, and then
you can play the Midgar section.
Right.
Yeah.
The Midgar
It'll
section.
probably be okay.
Blood, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I think, I would just be fine with going with the original. And I do think the original first is just to see how they've taken everything and interpreted it. Yeah.
It is nice that something like a Final Fantasy VII, it's like you have so many different ways to play it, where it's not like, oh, I have to
get out an old system,
old console and old game.
It's like on everything.
Yeah, I'm really happy about that. And you could say that about a lot of things now, and I appreciate that
it is
people can have that context if they so desire. Our last email comes in from Michael with my favorite headline of the three, Creatures Coming to Life.
Ooh.
Hi, Ben and Allies. Being from Central Florida, your recent talk with Bloodworth on Frame Trap about alligators got me thinking, what animalistic video game creature would scare you the most if it existed in real life? So I don't know for sure if he's saying like video game animals come to life, or like video game animals that have animal-like traits but don't actually exist. I think it's closer to that second one.
Any like giant gross fish thing.
Right. So, that's the thing. Like a lot of them are just like giant like I'm thinking like giant antlion. You know, like in Final Fantasy 4.
Dude, like a great one or something. Like, no, thank you.
I don't think King K. Rool is scary in the world of Donkey Kong or like in the world of Smash.
But the idea of an alligator with legs,
right? Like if you just plopped King K. Rool down here, he'd be pretty freaky. I think.
Oh yeah,
he'd be pretty gross.
Yeah.
Bloodborne is good, Brad. You like pretty much anything.
Yeah,
anything
in that game Bloodborne
would be good.
Like the spiders, like the human heads on it. Like no.
Yeah, no,
don't do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, of course, like the tarantulas in Resident Evil, but the tarantulas are bad enough on their own.
Yeah,
so it's not the best answer.
Right.
Resident Evil 4. Like if I saw
the Near Gigante thing or whatever.
No, just like the Las Plagas coming out of bodies like that in real life.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And some of those mutations that you get, no.
Like a hunter would be terrifying in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, stop it.
We got to do better than this though. There's more.
What do you mean? We picked Bloodborne.
That's good. I guess we're not really following the spirit of the question in some ways. I guess these are all animalistic. In Silent Hill 4, there's like that it's not really an animal, but it's kind of animalistic in the way that it moves. It like has the baby heads and is like walking at you with the hands. Yeah, that thing's nasty.
Oh, dude, another Bloodborne one, the giant shark guys in the fishing hamlet. They're just giant sharks with legs, and they have like huge anchors they swing at you.
I think the pigs would be awful as well.
The pigs, like everything is awful in that. Everything would be awful.
Everything is awful.
Everything.
I think if you brought a lot of the Mario enemies into like and made them real,
terrifying.
Sure.
Like and they didn't have that stylistic
a Goomba
nature.
Would be hideous.
Right. Like you think about the Mario Brothers movie, and
what does a Goomba actually do?
I don't know.
But a Goomba would be horrifying.
Yeah. Like anything would be horrifying.
Yeah. The Koopas would be horrifying.
Bowser would be terrifying.
Yes. Okay.
Everything from video game and real life is terrifying.
Yeah. Kirby would be terrifying.
Kirby would be absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Because he could just suck you up, dude.
Right. You just be talking. You'd be like, hey, Kirby.
You're dead.
Yeah. You become him.
Yeah. It's like Cell.
Yeah. Oh, man. When Cell is like sucking people up through his tail.
Yeah,
that's
like the horror vibes, dude. Yeah.
All right. That's going to be another frame trap in the books. Thank you so much to Bradley Ellis and Daniel Bloodworth. If you would like to send an email into Frame Trap, talk about weird things coming to life, email askeasyallies@gmail.com. Again, one more time, that is askeasyallies@gmail.com. Thank you both so much, and we will see you next time.